It's like, I know that GunGFu made it through the group with kind of a last-minute victory over Clem. Like, it wasn't quite his last match, but that was a big surprise for me. Anyhow, spawn on the right-hand side of Lightshade as the blue Terran. For Team Liquid, it is uThermal.
In the top left for Team Cascade Esports, he is GunGFuBanDa.
GunGFuBanDa. Oh, we have something already a little bit cheeky by uThermal here. Gas first, a fake proxy barracks. I think this kind of stuff, and I do think uThermal, oh my goodness. That is very fortunate and very unfortunate for uThermal, but that is the kind of confidence boost that I was thinking GunGFu would need going into a series like this.
Such a small little difference that ends up to have a great impact. He doesn't see it, and maybe direct damage isn't a problem, but anticipation, frustration, you know, self-doubting, it all comes into effect when you're just like, what the heck is going on? What is happening? So to get that confirmation is just so good for GunGFu, especially to what you were talking about, where he can have issues on the big stage, and this should be a very nice find. He's even going to stick around long enough to see what the intent is. Otherwise, uThermal's not shy about showing it. Grabs that factory.
Yeah, if you're wondering, like, why didn't he hide it? Why didn't he? Well, he wants to get an add-on down on that barracks eventually, and applying that to wherever you put the factory, it's going to delay that reactor by so much time. And he wanted GunGFu to react, overreact against this, maybe make a Zealot, maybe not take his Nexus as fast as possible. But so far, this is just a very decent opening for GunGFu, where he's not thrown off at all. And uThermal, he's had to give away something which he actually wanted to hide for way longer.
Absolutely. uThermal has not gotten his start for this game, but he is very good at adapting. That's what happens when you're a bit more of a unique player. You do tend to be better in some of the more wonky scenarios, like being scouted, like being behind. You can make stuff happen even when it doesn't look like it should. And in this case, it is going to be Hellions trying their darnest to actually get in and kill some probes. We'll see if he follows up into those Widow Mines. We saw Clem do a very similar build, actually. He just actually proxied the barracks in the factory.
I mean, it is this build where you go Hellions. Oh, he's actually going to go 4 Hellions. That's cool. I mean, uThermal, if there's one thing that he's never faltered on, it's his micro, right? Like, as far as foreigner Terrans go, I know Clem came up and he has phenomenal micro, but uThermal, for a long time, he was the Terran to look out for. GunGFu, he's been pretty good about the scanning. Oh, an armory goes up as well. uThermal absolutely one-basing this game. Doesn't mean he'll stay there, but it's going to be all about slowing down the Protoss to kind of be just as slow as you are economically.
This is exactly what Clem did yesterday, I believe. As I said, he proxied it more, but it still was the 1-1-1 on one base with the armory. He only got 2 Hellions. I will say that, so it's a slightly different build. But it's going to be very annoying for GunGFu to clean up, even though he does have a robo on the way. It's just going to be so much everywhere, basically, that it can be frustrating. You sometimes see slip-ups even with the best initial defenses. And here's the start to it. Hellions being picked up in that medevac to the main, where the units are also headed. So it should be all right.
I think GunGFu so far, he seems in very decent position. The probes as well, by attack moving, they didn't line up. Not one probe has fell so far. Lovely pylon wall by GunGFu. He's actually playing ridiculously well with all this.
Yeah, man. Like, I feel like so often, and this isn't even, it's not surprising. It's not a I told you so. But even me coming into GunGFu's PvTs, I'm like, well, you know, he did well once, but then I saw him, you know, not play super well another time. So I don't know. Every so often we see this almost perfect defense, and I'm like, oh, right. GunGFu is actually up there as far as the defenders Protoss. His defense is sometimes immaculate, and so far so good. It's not over quite yet, however, as now the Widow Mines come in. GunGFu is going to immediately pull away. He's already got an observer on the way too. He grabbed his 3rd Nexus, so no delay on his overall build. This is great for GunGFu.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there in the middle of the map. Maybe a Stalker went down or a probe or something like that. The Widow Mine still dropping in the natural here, but At least it's a lot of lost mining, but this Widowmine drop, this opening for uThermal, he is like, he definitely wanted this to deal way more damage than it's done so far.
Exactly. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, that stalker was so close to shooting. Oh, Lord. All right, uThermal needs to get that repaired. That would be all harassment now officially done. And uThermal needs to at least have the perception of being able to harass. Otherwise, GunGfu is going to explode, which I think he's already going to do, honestly. This is a very strong start for GunGfu. And while the supplies don't necessarily say that yet, it is because all of these investments are still investing. Eventually, very soon, they will pay off for the Protoss, not really for the Terran.
Yeah, it's starting to make sense why GunGfu was able to beat Clem, right? Like, we're looking at this and GunGfu's done, well, he's had no mistakes so far. It's all been very well controlled. And for anybody out there that's wondering, well, who is this guy? I haven't really heard about him that much. Currently, he sits in the top 10 on the European ladder with 6.8k MMR. And not a lot of players can do that whatsoever. So him being here, it's no surprise at all. And he's absolutely one of the tougher Protosses to go up against in Europe right now.
Sometimes that doesn't deliver on the big screen, as it were, I suppose. This is the big screen now. But right now, it absolutely is. uThermal has not been able to throw him off. Even if Cannon already placed at that third, you still have to pull the probes, but it means the Widowmines won't buy a lot of lost mining time, not nearly as much as uThermal would like. I love that he's still trying to get some harassment done, because he's gotta find something, hope for a big Widowmine hit, but it's not happening, not yet.
No, and like uThermal has to do this, because he sees a Protoss on full 3-base saturation here. GunGfu hasn't really missed a beat too much with this probe pulling. In fact, to say uThermal opened up 1 base against this, 8 probes worth of damage done, he's now at 60 probes versus 42 SCVs. This was not enough slowing down to bring uThermal into what you'd call a normal game. I wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of pulls the trigger and does what he can with this, because he is so far behind the longer this game goes on for.
Not sure what he can do. He's gonna try and push, and maybe he's okay to do this right now. Yeah, I don't think GunGfu is quite prepared to engage and counter, but it's not like he's unprepared for the defense. He will defend totally fine. What I mean to say is that uThermal should be able to kind of like posture, kind of scare, and then evacuate. Which if you wait another minute and GunGfu had charge or something, like that would be a very different story.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah, having charge. So. Yeah, having charge, and you don't have +1 done, you don't have combat shields yet. The 3 tanks, they're nice, but every second that GunGfu's buying here is just a good second for him. uThermal, there's no 3rd CC on the way or anything like that. He's pulled all of the boys as well, and he's going for it.
Yeah, that is not a surprise right there. uThermal is pulling SCVs into a Colossus build, and a lot of Zealots too, and that's exactly where the SCVs do the best job. They're going to tank a lot of shots, so uThermal is opening up a chance for him. He's actually going to grab onto these Colossus, potentially, just shy of the 1. Thank you, shield battery overcharge. But GunGfu actually is a little reprimanded for that, you know? Like, he couldn't pull back entirely, almost lost 1 Colossus, might have to resize up the engagement, you know? Actually get a surround going and then bust.
But look at this surround he's got going. He just walked in on his 3rd base. He's being very patient. The Zealots are sectioned in the middle to look for reinforcements there as well, which he doesn't see. Now he's getting ready for that big surround. I think GunGfu, he's collapsing in on this army zombie gun.
The bunkers do finish, and a couple of Marauders are going to get in there. The last tank lives at least for a little while longer, but I'm afraid GunGfu, with 3 bases still mining and decent army supply, a 3rd Colossus even about to join in, is just going to outlast uThermal. I mean, this game was just pretty bad for the Terran from the start. The SCV pool made sense to try and give him a chance, but he's not even going to grab that last Colossus. GG. GunGFuBanDa takes game 1.
You know, uThermal made that a lot closer than I thought it would be. You know, when I saw all the bunkers still living, I was like, actually, that went way better than I thought it would for him. But yeah, everything went about as bad as it could. Like, even just that first probe, not moving up the ramp immediately, just kind of itching over to the right a little bit. That was actually, I'm going to say it, incredibly lucky. But maybe GunGfu also just knows his opponent a little bit, because there's no need for that probe to arrive super damn fast. Like, yeah, you get to see what's going off, but just that little bit of extra time there by GunGfu. And uThermal is a prepper, but GunGFu did a little bit of his homework as well, and it paid off massively. And then just very solid follow up behind everything. Great start to the series for the German player.
It would be funny if he was just like, no, I just like clicked a little too far in the minimap. But I think I agree. I think it makes sense to take that extra barely even second to check around that natural mineral line, because uThermal definitely does those very, very slightly hidden barracks. In future games, he might hide at the third base, and I actually imagine if GunGFu were to see again no barracks in the main, that he'd probably check that too. So he is clearly on top of uThermal being a tricky guy. If he's surprised by that, he's not playing StarCraft, honestly. Like, uThermal after all these years. But it doesn't mean that uThermal's tricks can't eventually push through and actually gain victory. I mean, actually, that Clem DNS game where the same build was done, DNS was supposed to do much better against it. It just was like one slip up snowballed into a disaster.
Yeah, honestly, I've never seen a Hellion drop not get like at least 6 probes in that kind of situation. So GunGFu handled that really well. The attack move with the probes kind of surrounding and like limiting the surface area, even if it was just for a moment, was really smart. Second map for this series will be Romanticide, and spawning over in the bottom right hand side as our blue Terran, it is uThermal.
In the top left for Cascade Esports, he is a GunGFuBanDa.
Yeah, that that scout there. So I've had a moment where I had a similar feeling, and it really triggered me super hard. I can't remember who I was playing against, but it was a Protoss. And it was around a time where you'd put like I went for a 2-Rax, but it was behind their mineral line. And imagine this. So I'm proxying behind the mineral line, like the natural mineral line. And the guy sent his probe way too far over, and he admitted that he misclicked because it was way further. So even if he started making his nexus, the probe would be on the wrong side to go back in his base. And I lost because of that. So like a lot of this stuff can absolutely happen, but that looked a bit more, what's the word? Deliberate by GunGFu.
Right, yeah. Agreed. I think he was just mindful. He's not going to do it here, but that's also like, whether he does it first or, after scouting the high ground, it's still, I think he's going to be very aware of the possibility. So in this case, it is just a 1-Rax expands, nothing tricky. Yep, nothing tricky. And this is also a chance to talk about the fact that uThermal might be a tricky player. He does have his own particular style. We can't disregard the fact that he is just a solid Terran player, but certainly that's, I don't know, that's not where he highlights, his skill necessarily. That's where we, I guess, say that uThermal is always usually adding in something a bit different, so he doesn't usually depend on pure mechanics. They are pretty good, but that's, I don't know if he's actually going to be testing it against GunGFu, who's looked very strong in overall PvT.
This is a very good map for, being very greedy as a Terran, and as far as mech goes against Protoss, uThermal has been one to make it happen, but it's very difficult to pull off. I just want to note as well, something for Protoss players, this is a tip for Protoss players out there. Very often when a Terran is using 2 SCVs to hold off the probe to make sure that it's not on location there at the natural, 9 times out of 10, it's always a Reaper. Given that if you go for the Marine first, very often you don't need to have the second SV. The one SV will do the job in time for the Marine to get out.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, this game, everything, this is a very, very standard looking game thus far.
I really like GunGFu's plan here. So he delays the Twilight Council for a little bit by getting a Sentry, which is, 100 gas. That's a lot in the early game. But the Sentry is going to guarantee him one of the fastest scouts possible, because the Adept should never get into the main, right? That's a scout of a type, but he wants to see what's actually happening in the main. And if you wait for a Robo to build an Observer, even if you go for a Stargate, it's obviously a little less different of an overall game plan to actually just sneak into that Sentry, still go into the Blink, and then react depending on that hallucination. Point is, I just think that GunGFu scouting is going to be very, very beneficial for him. Oh, nice little trap there in the Reaper.
Yeah, GunGFu, did you see that? They both smiled a little bit at that happening. I think it wasn't entirely necessary, because that hallucination you were pointing out, it is a massive deal. And I think that's quite good for uThermal. Gets to keep everything a little bit private for now. That being said, the build that he's went for is like the most standard build possible. Like, it's usually a double Widowmine drop. But again, on this map, given that it's a very defensive map, usually for Terran, Protoss love 4-gate Blink Stalker on this. So he's kind of foregone the 2nd/3rd Widowmine and just gone straight into tank production. So I love the fact that uThermal's playing the map a little bit here, but he sees that his opponent, he's not the 4-gate Blink Stalker.
Yeah, when you see the Nexus like this, it's not going to be a hyper aggression. It's not even the 3-gate. It is just the 2 gates into the macro game. uThermal skipping a 2nd Widowmine going for a tank could have absolutely been defensive if he actually was suspicious of it, if that Nexus wasn't seen. Now that he sees the Nexus, I mean, uThermal has been a guy to do some very odd attacks, basically assuming the Protoss won't know that such an odd attack timing exists. But I think this map being defensive, being still quite large, middle of the road really, but still, I think uThermal just wants to get a little bit of harassment with his Liberator and then build up his tank count for a later engagement, because he does grab a fairly quick 3rd CC.
It's so crazy to think that this medevac is here. It's not spotted. It's right next to a huge bunch of Stalkers, though. And Blink is so close to finishing here. And yeah, I like how uThermal's handled this all so far, because I don't think it's necessarily super out of the norm. But the Liberator, oh, okay, this is a little out of the norm. But he's shown that he's gone for 3 CC as well behind this. So it's not super duper committed.
I should have stuck with my guns to Muslim. uThermal just does these types of pushes, you know? It's just like, it doesn't, even to us who see his actual production, it's like a little weird. Why do a push when you're getting a 3rd CC? But he knows that GunGFu is usually not going to anticipate it. But he did scout with the Adept, he scouted with the Observer. Now it's time for some of the harassment opportunities, the Medevac, the Liberator, to hopefully pull some units out of position. Doesn't go well for the Medevac, but the Liberator is killing probes and denying mining. And GunGFu is, you know, panicking a little bit because bunkers are going to come down, and that does really help this push. Otherwise, the Stalkers eventually grow, charge will eventually finish. It's fine, but with bunkers, this actually gets really serious.
Yeah, and GunGFu's pulling his probes so far away every time. It's not just like, a little pull to this mineral patch or whatever. It's fully pulled away. These tanks, though, they're shelling out a lot of damage on that Immortal. Is it going to get back to the shield battery? No, that's a big takedown, actually. The other Stalkers, there will be enough to clean this up. GunGFu, he holds, but considering all the damage he took, he's not been mining gas throughout all of this, by the way, Zombie Grub. 0 gas income, even now. So that, it has definitely stunted his growth.
Yeah, definitely one of those engagement types where you have to look at the things outside of the direct damage. The battle report was actually specifically amazing for that type of engagement. We saw exactly what the trades were, but then, yeah, pointing out that the gas was completely not mining is absolutely huge. GunGFu, he did get a little flummoxed. He was like, oh, you know, that's happening. Oh, this is happening. Oh, wait, he's actually pushing. And didn't have, it's not that he didn't know, he just doesn't have that many units. He's still building up an actual quantity of units as a Protoss player to react. So he had to pick and choose, and it was a little wonky. This counter is also a little wonky. No War Prism, no Proxy. Really hoping that uThermal's maybe macro had slipped during that, but uThermal's totally fine.
Yeah, getting pushed by that, like it was really cool by uThermal. Like it started off with the Widowmine drop, the single Widowmine drop, which was super delayed. I've liked that uThermal's been doing stuff, a lot of stuff very offbeat, like hiding the Reaper in the main for a long time to get the perfect scout. The Widowmine drop singularly delayed as well, and he's been reacting to a player that he's kind of been expecting to be a little bit different, let's say, and he's been thrown off a little, but all his reactions have absolutely got him into the game, and not just into the game, but I kind of like uThermal's stead in this game as well.
Second Widowmine made me a little nervous about the SCVs, but it looks like it went all right. And actually, even better, uThermal pounces on GunGFu's aggressive Stalkers. And GunGFu, I don't know if he just was at the exact moment was distracted because he was trying to micro on 2 fronts, but he just lost a lot of Stalkers down to 4. They certainly can't do very much as far as kiting goes or buying time goes. But they do fall back to Big Papa Colossus, and that's not a very sizable Terran army, no medevacs either. So now it's time for GunGFu to kind of get some revenge, like a little bit, and uThermal has to stim to leave.
It's always a sad feeling when you have to stim to get away, never mind to deal damage, but this ragtag army is... it does get home. Oh, maybe not. Definitely little fella's left behind. That Warp Prism in the main still dealing damage. Oh, this is turning into a little bit of a chaotic game, it has to be said.
For certain. The Warp Prism lasting just a little bit more than it really should because it did take damage from the missile turret, but the Viking was a little late, didn't actually find it immediately. uThermal had a understandable chase of after those stalkers, but then I guess should have given up halfway, so there's been a little bit of over-eagerness on both sides, I guess is what we sum it up as. And as we take a gander at the overall situation, GunGFu's Nexus is almost finished, so is uThermal's 4th Command Center. uThermal's got 2-2 on the way. GunGFu still only on that 1 forge. Is going to fall a little behind in the upgrades.
Yeah, which is actually quite a big deal. Like, not starting any armor upgrades. I know the 2nd forge is coming along now, but uThermal will get a pretty big lead in the upgrades. That Observer's very nice over there. uThermal's gearing up for a drop of Widow Mines over in the far left. This little army in the middle, it isn't super strong. Doesn't want to pick a fight with the Colossus, but it's very, very mobile.
Excellently placed pylon sees the Widow Mine drop, but again, can GunGFu react appropriately in all directions? Since the push is now headed over to the right side, a probe actually sees it. Nicely done on that probe. And the Widow Mine drop, well, of course, knows it's been scouted. We'll just wait until GunGFu is well and truly distracted, maybe even taking an engagement, which GunGFu might be able to do right now. uThermal actually kind of needs to leave while his Widow Mines are still kind of scary. There's only 1 more, and there's a lot of Zealots, 3 Colossus that have no counter. Yeah, I think they both are... uThermal should get away. GunGFu should respect reinforcements.
Cute move by GunGFu. He actually blinked the Stalker onto the Widow Mine shadow and focus fired it with his Colossus to get rid of it, given that he didn't have an Observer. Very nice. Oh, no. Okay, they're not bunching up as bad as I thought they might. Still 5. It's not the worst thing in the world for uThermal.
Unfortunately, no other engagement, though. All of GunGFu's army was focused on that Widow Mine drop, but he also had spotters knowing that he could, I suppose. So once again, sending out Zealots, Pylons. The Observer's been over the main entry point of uThermal's base, too, which is just... Ooh, that could be very frustrating when you go back and watch the replay. Fake Warp Prism is going to get found, and with that much... Actually, if it was a real Warp Prism, it had no chance. There was a Widow Mine. There's 4 Vikings. It's a good thing it was hallucinated.
Yeah. This is definitely getting to a later stage in PvP that you don't always see. Like, uThermal, despite all the aggression, he's been pretty comfortable with sitting back, right? Like, he's taking a 5th CC now. I know a lot of Terrans kind of go by a rule, like, if you're on 2 base, Protoss on 2 base, that's good for you. If you're on 3 base, Protoss on 3 base, that's also good for you. As soon as it starts extending from that point on, that's when it starts to get a little bit dicey, because DTs, if they do come onto the field with Blink and what have you, it gets so hard to establish any base beyond the 4.
That's absolutely true, which kind of puts the Terra in a position where they want to control the game while expanding behind it so that there's not room to build those DTs. But then by controlling the game, you're not back at home defending. Your transition to Liberators gets a little shakier if you're actually trying to drop and maybe you take a bad engagement. It can be difficult to situate yourself in the late game as the Terran, as the Protoss also has a bank, also has a lot of technology, but it's not impossible, of course. uThermal is already setting up a 4th base, planetary, 5th on the way, more upgrades, rounding out his Viking numbers, and hopefully maybe a couple more goes. He's at 5 right now, it's a pretty decent number. Taking a bit of a engagement, his little push out got found. That is all of GunGFu's army looking for an actual fight, which I'm a little surprised by, but he's gonna go for it.
I mean, this is his window where he's not, super far behind in upgrades. It's 2-1 against 2-2 right now. Big force fields go down, and those ghosts, they're all clumped up there, and that is a few juicy disruptors. But it's gonna be hard for either one of them to engage here. I kind of like the fact that GunGFu's over here if you're uThermal, and not elsewhere and denying your 5th base from going up, which is happening on the right side right now.
GunGFu actually made a proxy gateway to allow access into fast reinforcements on the front lines, as well as on the harassment. 3rd CC can't even be lifted. 5th CC is going to barely be lifted. But this is one of the really terrible times for the Terran. They're actually going to try and basically all in, I feel. uThermal hopes to have a good fight, but around shield batteries, around cannons, he does get a couple of EMPs off. But, is this going to be a good fight for him? I don't know. GunGFu has so much more to fall back to.
He does. He is behind in supply by quite a bit, but I also see it from GunGFu's style that he's letting that be a thing just so he can warp in whenever he wants, which is kind of cool. This army from uThermal, though, like now that the ghost count's been absolutely nullified, I'm worried for him, Jess. I really am.
Yeah. I mean, with uThermal's past experiences, I wouldn't be surprised if he actually over-engaged, just kind of was like, oh, the DTs, oh, the base, like, and then took an engagement that he absolutely was not going to win, despite a army surplus. But he doesn't. You know, he actually calms things down. He pulls back, maybe reevaluates the situation, says, okay, I have a huge bank. Like, I'm just going to replace this third, and the game will go on. He's still going to need a decent engagement as GunGFu has filled up that supply, plenty of disruptors, still with those DTs and zealots ready to go for some harassment. But maybe uThermal's a bit better situated for it. Engagement going down in the natural as the zealots run into most of uThermal's army. That didn't actually do very much.
Yeah, it's got to be said, uThermal's handling these fights very well. He is chasing down these Blink DTs, and they are not cheap whatsoever. But GunGFu, he's pushing the aggression here towards the main base of uThermal. Loads more ghosts are joining the field here for uThermal, which is exactly what he should be getting. And a little bit of a flank here from a Rambo squad of Marauders doing, oh my goodness, they took out nearly all the disruptors here. Great flank.
Just that little bit, man, makes the Colossus decide, you know, where the heck am I supposed to shoot? The Disruptors actually kind of have to respect it, but they don't really want to waste, you know, a shot on just 3 Marauders, but they have to consider it. It makes it super awkward, and there was even another portion of army coming in for another surround anyways, if that didn't work out, but it really did. GunGFu loses all of the expensive, slow-building units, and is going to be forced to hold on with a lot of basic gateway units, but this Disruptor does not get the shot. That was the one hope there. uThermal is starting to get a little bit overstimmed, and he's going to take a little bit before sizing up the army again. But he's got 50 supply over his opponent. As long as he doesn't run face first into Disruptors, which there are no longer any anyways, he is actually going to take this game. And it felt like it was all of a sudden, GunGFu just crumbled.
Yeah, I mean, look at that bank. He still can't spend his money. He was only on 10 gateways with all this happening. It was really down. Those Marauders, oh my goodness, were they MVPs in this game. And this ghost count now, not only are they good for EMP, I know it's only 6, but Zealots, they get absolutely massacred by ghosts, and that EMP's got enough for days all over this army of GunGFu.
Yeah, the Disruptor shooting actually was just a green light for uThermal to pounce on the army. Got that concave, grabs the Disruptor. There's 2 Colossus on the way, which is a bit sturdier as far as holding the line goes, but the Vikings, even though they're landed, I mean, could just lift again, kill them. The ground army's going to be able to kill the Colossus. Zealots come in from behind, but don't really have any support. GunGFu not going to be very happy about this game because he was in an okay position. He's starting to take the map. He had so much technology. He had a good army, but it was such a fantastic fight for uThermal that he's able to carry it to victory. He still doesn't have his 3rd orbital down. He only recently got his 5th base set up again, but with the army that he had, he took an amazing engagement.
If we can load up the resources lost tab just for a moment here as this game is closing out, look how efficient uThermal has been in these fights. 31,000 to 19,000. You don't often see that. And that just goes to show how good these engagements have been. And GunGFu, he's fighting till the bitter end here. He really is, but even snipes going down on the Zealots. It's not often a Protoss hears that sound these days.
No, it's not. It used to be so common back when Snipe was good against High Templars, but
yes,
good in this case against those Zealots.
Oh, beautifully played by uThermal, because I really think that he was expecting 4-gate Blink Stalker. I really do. Like, I'm 100% about that. And the fact that he saw that 3rd go down when it did, he had to change his plan entirely. And he's like, all right. Got a tank, getting a 2nd tank. I'll get a Liberator as well. And he really made something happen. Wasn't a lot, but it absolutely got him back into the game.
It did more than I think it was supposed to. GunGFu was, as I said, a little bit distracted, didn't quite have enough to deal with it, so uThermal starts it off well enough and ends it with quite an engagement. So that's going to tie up the series, and that means we are going to go to a break. So when we come back, it is more uThermal versus GunGFuBanDa. Another tied up series as we head into game 3 on Blackburn as well, which it's always an interesting map, especially for this matchup with, in particular, a player like uThermal, but we'll get into it when we're into the game. It's starting up now, but I'm so glad that it is tied up. A bit surprising, though. The way that uThermal won that last game was very abrupt. I was starting to get worried for his mentality. Sometimes you see him versus Protoss, and he does do the whole, forget about it, but he really brought that one back, and it with decisive fashion. So, well done, uThermal. We're into Blackburn now. In the bottom left, as the red Protoss, he is GunGFuBanDa.
And spawning over in the bottom right, as our blue Terran, it is uThermal. I know everybody knows Team Liquid's a very good team and has always had that hold in Europe, or at least in the StarCraft 2 scene as a very solid team. But it's got to be said, like the amount of Cascade players I'm seeing recently, like Souls, Skillis, and what have you. I think, is DNS also playing for Cascade?
I think so. I mean, he was, definitely.
Yeah, definitely a decent roster they must have these days, because all those players are sitting very highly on the ladder.
Mm-hmm. I actually was going to say the same thing about Team Exxon, but that has now merged with Psystorm. So seeing that name pop up more in the European region.
Yeah, definitely. And uThermal, this game, is, again, mixing it up quite a bit. This map, it's unusual, right? Like, wait, GunGFuBanDa also mixing it up. What? In fact, no, he isn't. Sorry. I thought that's a second gas by him. But uThermal, he's got 2 gases mining here. This is a very, very, very different build by him. And, okay, I was almost worried for a second that this probe wouldn't go into the base. And it would be a situation where GunGFu had no idea what he was up against. But he does get the big scout off here, which is huge.
Yeah, you want to see that second refinery. Confirm the factories in base 2 is actually really nice. But I'm with you. There's been a couple of Protosses that have left after seeing the one barracks, and I'm like, oh, why though? Nah, he gets the full information. And yeah, there is GunGFu doing a normal expand build. I think on the mini map, it just kind of looked like the gateway was the assimilator. And yeah, this map is starting off already a bit different thanks to uThermal. I did pinpoint as why this map is even more unique than it already is. Blackburn's got that U shape, so it's already different than so many other maps. It also has this it's a real butt in the middle of the map, honestly. Like, it's just annoying to get to the middle of the map. You got, like, doodads, you got a slow zone, but most importantly, you have a choke that you can abuse with, like, tanks, for instance, and then drop into high ground. So that is worth considering. uThermal is opening up with the Hellion and a Widow Mine, and then 2 Reapers. Huh. Bit of everything.
I've seen Innovation, I think it was Innovation versus Trap, do a build very similar to this. Like, it started off exactly the same. And it was on Jagannatha. It's going to be different already because uThermal's going for his starport here. But GunGFu's quite quick to find out where these Reapers are. We'll get 1 kill, but ultimately all these guys wanted, I mean, a little bit of damage would have been nice, but that scout on that Stargate is pretty huge.
Dude, the Hellion was... Technically, there's nothing to kill it. And then the probes went for a citizen arrest, and it was amazing. He blocked it up against a shield battery that was just canceled once he realized that the threat was over. Very nice.
Definitely a good start for GunGFu, right? Because this opening by uThermal, he's definitely stunted his own growth by going for this much later command center. Oh, that Widow Mine gets a bit of a kill as well. Now we'll try to run away. Won't be able to make it, but Widow Mine for an adept. In the grand scheme of things, that's okay for uThermal, absolutely. And he gets to see that there's 3 adepts.
Now 2, of course. Yeah. But that means that, the intention was there to actually get some damage done when you go into all 3 adepts, when you actually send them across the map. Without a bunker, it looked a little bit scary, but uThermal not only decreased the adept number, also bought a little bit more time, which means that the Cyclone is going to pop out. Had the adepts instantly gone across... I mean, they could have got like a couple of Marines, right? Still not a super big deal, but now with the Cyclone especially, it's all good. And uThermal did get that scout and that Stargate, as you're pointing out. You can use that to both build defensively, so the Oracle coming in is going to get blocked by the Cyclone. The Adepts, not going to get very much more. You can also set up an aggressive attack with these types of units, which uThermal might be doing.
I really like a lot of what uThermal did there. killed the third adept, and then there was 2 remaining. That almost always signals in an Oracle. He hid the Cyclone on the high ground. The first time the Shades came in, he was ready for it, and you saw that he kept on hiding it. The information just wasn't there for GunGFu, so that was very nice, sneaky, tricky play by uThermal. And right now he's getting Vikings, he's getting tanks. It could very much be, well, now that he's actually making a tech lab on that starport, I don't think it is going to be a timing kind of attack, but yeah, it looks like we're going to turn into a 3cc game with a Raven most likely. So very, very, very macro-centric openers by both of them.
I can definitely, again, I think it's one of those like, well, he's getting a 3rd CC, why is he pushing? Yeah, he is going to push. He's got 2 Cyclones and 3 Vikings, so if he didn't, I would have questioned that many units made, those types of units made anyways. But now he is going to go for a bit of a push while also grabbing that Raven behind it. So GunGFu, I think, very aware this was a very aware this was a possibility, wants to get ahead of it. So his Stalkers almost grabbed that Cyclone, not quite, at least by a couple extra seconds. And he was already mindful of building a shield battery in a place that could cover both his 3rd and natural. But this is the exact type of push that I was alluding to earlier on when it comes to this map. If a medevac was here, it could also lift into the main base, but even just without it, there's a bit of a choke. It's kind of an awkward scenario where you could defend your 3rd, but then your natural would be open. So, you know, it can turn south on the Terran. They eventually will have to leave, but initially it's scary for the Protoss.
I'm really scared for uThermal in this position. Like, I know that charge isn't done yet, but seeing this army, I was about to say, trying to get back home is a bit tricky. He's done it about as well as you can. If GunGFu was a bit quicker to find out that that was happening, that could have been really bad, because this army, there's no stim, there's no real sustainability. It's a very weak army, all things considered.
Absolutely. The charge finishing is going to be difficult if he plans on actually taking his 3rd command center, which is exactly what he's doing. The charge lots will come in on an army that still feels like it's depending mostly on those tanks. Stim is only 30% done, barely even that. The barracks production isn't really set up, only just now adding in those Marauders. GunGFu, he's got a War Prism. He's got a lot of Zealots. He delayed his upgrade, so he's going to have a lot of units. And he could actually pull the trigger or just go for some like multi-pronged pressure, right? War Prism in the main, attack at the 3rd, and control the game from there.
I mean, you're totally right. He's getting a little bit of a scout here to find out what's going on. Sees a couple of tanks in defense. The thing is, how good is the Widowmine count? It's 0 here. Like, I know there's a reactor on this factory, but he produced the tanks, did the push, and GunGFu is doing exactly what you said, Zombie Grub. He's going to be in the main base with a lot of Zealots.
uThermal's gonna have to pull an already small bio army away from the front lines. I think he has just barely enough to cover both sides, but it was gonna be a tricky scenario. It looks like it's actually handled very, very well. GunGFu tries to save the War Prism, but it actually doesn't even get the Cyclone again. That thing is just a miracle at this point. And the War Prism does go down. So that's a whole gigantic threat gone. uThermal handled that very professionally.
Yeah, and that tank on the high ground is natural as well. I don't think GunGFu saw that. And then when he got shot by 3 tanks, not 2, it altered everything. Because in his head, I'm pretty sure he's looking at that army as very doable. That 1 extra siege tank there, hidden by uThermal, again, just keeps him absolutely in this. Upgrade-wise, they're both trotting along here with their 1-1. GunGFu's tech choice will be Storm, while he's teching, or rather expanding to a 4th base over in the top left.
uThermal has gotten past probably the most scary point of the game, where he was a bit low on that bio, didn't have the upgrades. Now he's got all the upgrades. He's got a good number of tanks, and will eventually add on some Widowmines. And now he's going to have to deal with Storms. The scan goes down to the natural, because it is a bit of a question. In the pet, like, this is kind of like come around and gone, and it's just, you know, metas change and whatever. It, for a time, was like fairly popular to go into Colossus, because I think Storm was like a little too on the nose, you know? EMPs would deal with both the Zealots and the Storms. Then we had people go back to being like, you know what, actually, Storm is the follow-up? No, it's still pretty good. You just have to be very smart about it, you know? High Templar is not all clumped up, usually in a War Prism. At this level, I'd say, has to be in the War Prism. And that is a important thing for uThermal to confirm. So he saw the High Templars. He knows what he's up against.
Yeah, they've both got very good standard armies, I'd say. Oh, uThermal gets a little bit of a pounce here. The armory is being done for him, so his 2-2 will fall behind a little bit of GunGFu. Gets a big scan in this army, and This Storm, there's only one High Templar in this mix. This isn't scary enough for uThermal to be worried about, and he's just going for it.
Well, the Warp Prism somewhere. Oh, good feedback on that Raven. The Raven is going to scout the Warp Prism, which is actually kind of something. The Raven couldn't do anything else. At least he gets a scout, but here come the Storms, blanketing the Terran army as the charge lots just rip and tear through it. uThermal forced to retreat. His supply doesn't dip that poorly as he does hold on to a lot of the bio. But man, that was a very scary engagement, and it's not quite done yet.
No, I think GunGFu might have overextended here as he ran through these slow zones. It's actually so good for Terran fighting in this area, like unbelievably good. But yeah, those Storms from downtown, oh my god, the Widow Mines. They're still there. They're still able to deal damage. Yeah, I think uThermal, considering that Warp Prism came out of nowhere, handled that beautifully. And GunGFu, I love the fact that he almost baited uThermal into attacking him.
The Storms could have been a lot better, right? Like, it's fantastic that they came in from an angle that was unexpected, that was difficult to deal with, but uThermal did have it like a second advance notice. He was already fairly well split, so that even one of the last Storms from GunGFu didn't actually hit anything. It was maybe predicting uThermal to panic in bulk, but it actually kind of whiffed. So that really was a great salvage of the situation, because with the charge lots also coming in, I was very concerned. But the Widow Mines did their job. They lasted another, round as well. And the supplies still end up favoring uThermal. That doesn't mean that GunGFu's out of the game, of course. Had he continued overextending, it might have been different. But he backed away. He's getting his gold base up, and he's moving on to additional splash.
Yeah, the upgrades, like, they're both moving along. They definitely are. But it's getting to that phase of the game where uThermal's getting up to 4 bases. GunGFu's already been set at 4 bases. Second Robo, I believe, has been added for GunGFu. And yeah, it's going to be like more aggression from him. Whenever a Warp Prism is being made or on the map, Protoss should be utilizing that almost never defensively, just pure aggression, because it's so easy to pull a Terran apart with the Warp Prism.
I'm going to scan from uThermal right in the heart of the natural in the third. I think just either seeing where the army is, which he didn't actually see, or seeing the type of army. He sees a Robo, and it's just predictable at this point that GunGFu would be adding on Colossus and, yeah, eventually Disruptors as well. So they are both really rounding out their compositions, and uThermal starting to add on extra command centers too. Finally finishes up his 2-2. It's not a surprise GunGFu has gotten ahead in the upgrades. That's also what Chrono can do for you. But it is a real late game TVP here.
Definitely is, and this map is one that you can absolutely split super nicely. There is obviously the 12 o'clock late base and the 6 o'clock, which that can cause some diversity about which one's actually better for you. But yeah, uThermal, he's got to this late game situation with only 3 Vikings thus far. One thing that he did really good on Romance side, by the way, that I probably didn't give him enough credit for, was just shutting down those DT run-bys. They never really caused him a true problem.
That's true. I mean, the first one was kind of a whammy, but then he handled the rest very, very well. A little bit of an engagement here. The Widow Mines face first get popped. Actually, do get the pop off, but the Ghosts, much more importantly, face first right into the Colossus beams, trapped by the force fields. uThermal just, I'm guessing they're in a separate hotkey, right? So they got pulled back a little bit later than the bio that was responding to the Zealots.
I think he had no what's the word, kind of idea that GunGFu would have actually went for that. That was 7 Ghosts falling here. That is incredibly bad. Wow, he actually got the Widow Mine at the same second that the Stalker died. Yeah, GunGFu, he's not afraid of using those Stalkers to clean things up. He has to be careful though, because he has a huge bank available, but he's doing that thing again where he kind of keeps his warping available almost before the fight, then kind of enforces with what he feels he needs.
Well, it can be very useful if you end up getting dropped, or if you want to go for more harassment, then you want to actually take a direct fight, which is kind of what he's setting up here. Zealots headed right into the natural, are going to avoid any potential planetary at the 5th, or I think it's the 6th, actually. uThermal is quite good at expanding on this map. GunGFu's looking for a fight. He's going to take care of some of these Ghosts, which are nowhere near actually hitting the High Templars. GunGFu realizing that uThermal was a little too far apart from him. Maybe wasn't also paying attention. Now he's going to go for a surround of a type. Storm on the left side forces the units to pick up in that medevac. And uThermal is going to have to entirely give up this location, as he also takes damage economically back at home.
Oh, this game is a different story to the last one. If we look at the resources lost tab, it's actually uThermal that's been trading very inefficiently. And given that GunGFu's been sitting very comfortably, he's got a bank available. He's had better upgrades for most of the time being here. uThermal didn't start his +3 armor as well, and that's because he's super strapped for cash. And now GunGFu's able to be the aggressor, which is absolutely what he wants to do.
Scary situation for uThermal. He's lost control of the situation. He is the one forced to take a defensive engagement against a guy who's got everything in his arsenal. Storms, Immortals, Colossus, even a Disruptor in there. Here comes some of the Storms. uThermal gets the best concave setup that is humanly possible, but he is down an upgrade, and it's just simply put, a very fearsome Protoss army. GunGFu also a little hesitant, though, knows how powerful a concave can be, thanks to that last game. It's gonna wait it out a little bit. You know, he grabbed the planetary. He thinks he's in control, and I think that he is as well, so wait it out a little bit.
Yeah, I like that he was splitting up the High Templars a little bit. The one way that he can lose is if he has no Storm available. Oh, that was a beautiful EMP, though, from uThermal. How many Storms are actually available? Maybe one, maybe two-ish in this mix?
Dude, this is about to turn into a real surround here. Disruptor shot at shot already. Another EMP goes down. Planetary even contributing to the fight a little bit with the Zealots. But uThermal, he is down by 20, 30, 50 army supply. So the surround might not be able to do it. GunGFu comes in without a Warp Prism, which was also a reason why uThermal might have had a chance. But the engagement was not good enough. uThermal now down 50 supply, about to lose his planetary despite his best efforts to save it. And that will not turn around the engagements, and GunGFu's even reinforcing from across town. Here comes a Warp Prism, and that should solidify the win.
Oh, imagine that. He had 4k minerals in the bank and over 2k gas. 11 Stalkers just warped in, and GunGFu, he's got money for days in this game, and he's going to head back home. This is just a small little army, but he's feeling confident. He's even microing the Archons and what have you. The second warp in, or the next warp in rather, I think that's going to be the nail in the coffin for uThermal, because I don't see him hanging off against this amount of Protoss.
It is kind of amazing how close it could have been, though. Like, that surround opportunity was amazing. It just wasn't enough actual stuff there. And then it's so close to GunGFu actually being a little too gun shy and maybe pulling back, which means that uThermal has just a couple extra seconds. Maybe he comes out of this with his planetary still alive. But he lost his planetary, he lost his third. The command center in the top also has still not actually been mining. Everything's going against him. He needs a beautiful fight, and this isn't going to be it. Going down his own choke into the Protoss army. It was last attempt, but it is not going to go favorably. GunGFu takes the lead with the 2-1.
Wow, I think so far this is probably unexpected for a lot of people, right? But given that GunGFu he was the one guy to take a series off Clem in that initial group, it does just show you that he's actually playing a very solid PvT. I'm going to quickly look at what his win ratio is on the ladder and stuff. He's actually like 60% plus across the board in all matchups right now. And that's with him playing the top of Europe constantly, because he's 6.8k MMR. Like, yeah, he's absolutely playing really damn good StarCraft. And it's so nice to see as well that he was so nervous about some of his games in the group stage, like some of the first games as well, like before anything came super down to the wire, that here, when it really matters, he's more than shown up. He's playing the exact kind of Protoss that I know he's capable of and that I see him very often doing in practice. It's beautiful.
He's really delivering here in this best of 5. And that, as you said, might be a surprise to a bunch of people who don't recognize the name, or who might recognize it as a guy who, you know, maybe it was good in the past or something like that. But now he's really doing well recently. I don't know what changed mentality-wise, maybe meta-wise, something like that, but he has been putting in the work, and it's finally paying off. Because he was one of the guys who did disappear from StarCraft for a little bit. When he came back, it was a big question, is like, how serious was he about coming back? And that was years ago at this point. So it's been a while, but it's finally coming through. It's finally showing itself. He's doing wonderfully against uThermal. Could take the 3-1. Definitely see it happening. But uThermal, despite having his frustrations occasionally, he's never out of tricks. You know, he's never out of ways to play. Like, he could certainly bring it back still.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that game opened up with him going for the racks, gas in his base, which GunGFu scattered very quickly. Didn't take any damage from the Reapers and what have you. By no means was it over and done and dusted, but uThermal's plan here, he went for that push with the tanks, the landed Vikings and what have you, taking a third behind it. GunGFu's he's not really buying into any of it, right? Like, he was constantly probing. He had a shield battery in the right location. In fact, that is one thing that I think has helped GunGFu a lot. Just the fact that he is a very good defensive Protoss. Things like shield battery overcharge could have absolutely helped him just solidify that standing that he is very good defensively. And you can see that he's not thrown off by uThermal, which is a very easy thing for any player to be done by him, actually.
Yeah, uThermal, you know, he was one of the best Terrans for the non-Korean scene, right? For a while there. He did win a championship after all and just stayed very good even when he was having his wrist problems. And it wasn't just because he was a weird player. He actually was able to back it up with very solid fundamentals and occasionally showing a real streak of stubbornness that has gotten him back into games, such as uThermal versus Stefano. So he's overall still a very good player. I still absolutely believe in him, but times have been a-changing. I mean, he hasn't been the best non-Korean Terran for a while because Clem has really taken that mantle, and I think uThermal has shown a lot of respect to that. I think he also says positive things about Seoul, right? But there's one thing for certain. He's still the trickiest of the bunch. And I don't know. Personal bias, he's still the most lovable, all right? Rebel of dub-dubs forever.
So one thing so we're just waiting on uThermal joining us for a minute or two. But yeah, uThermal at some point in time, you had Big Gabe and him as to who was the best European Terran at least. And it was Big Gabe had the consistency. uThermal had a bit of the flair, a bit of the pizzazz almost. But here going up against GunGFu, I'm glad that uThermal took a bit of time because he's allowed it. And 2-1 down. Now he has to bring out all the best stuff. Does he need to resort to slight trickery with builds and stuff against GunGFu? I don't know. It seems like he feels he does so far. But if there's anything that uThermal could maybe tell himself at this point, is GunGFu's reacting really well to a lot of these shenanigans. Maybe just buckling up, trying to go toe-to-toe with him as opposed to getting a little edge early on. Because I think uThermal, he's shown that he's more than capable of going toe-to-toe with GunGFu.
Yeah, it's never comfortable to be in a Supreme late game, but uThermal's actually gotten some pretty good starts in the late game, you know? He's been able to get a lot of command centers. That last game was actually very seamless for him. He was getting into a good army with a lot of extra economy, and it was like right as he was getting situated, right as he was getting like the map on his side is when GunGFu was able to break him. So it's not like it's an impossible task, but it is unfortunately one that has been difficult and has put him at the deficit score-wise. In the top right, playing for Team Liquid down 1, he is uThermal.
And spawning over in the bottom left-hand side of Oxide as a red Protoss, it is Cascade's GunGFuBanDa. I'm definitely, like, when I watch Big Gabe play against Protosses, he is very good about just playing seemingly very standard, like he's made it his own, and just kind of kills them, right? Just rolls over them. Doesn't tend to want to go late game, but he knows he has these timing windows, which he utilizes very well, and kind of maximum goes up to 3 bases, at least willingly, unless something went terribly wrong. I think one thing that I would love to see from uThermal this game is just, this is a good map for you. You're doing a lot of cheeky stuff, like you're trying to react to your opponent before you see things, such as like the one Widow Mine into tank. Maybe doing something a little more orthodox. Maybe you should be the one trying to deal damage as opposed to looking to repel your opponent and do something afterwards. Oh, is that it's a reactor first? Okay, this is cool.
So still a little bit different, but not drastically so. I think I overall agree with you. Maybe staying the course a little bit on your build and just executing it the way you envisioned and kind of damned be the scouting can sometimes work out very well. Not usually a case where you say don't scout, but let me take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, that reactor first coming out, uThermal. What does this mean, the Muslim? Break it down. Why is it so interesting?
So I think it's actually going to turn into like a 6 Marine push with like 2 Hellions or something. Oh, wow. Okay. Second barracks. Now it's a question of, is it going to be a third barracks? But the reason that this is interesting to skip the first unit entirely, and did GunGFu see it? Let me just check his vision. He did see it. that always has you on your toes a little bit. Just very willing to just to do your thing, which is what I wanted from uThermal. That's kind of what I was talking about. It wasn't necessarily just about like scan and reacting, but just to do your thing. This game, it's going to be GunGFu that's a bit like, oh, okay, yeah, you're not trying to throw me off the rails a little bit here. And this most likely, it is a 3-racks opening. I'm looking forward to how he wants to utilize this, because this is, in my head, one of the worst maps for it, because you've just got that natural ramp, but hey, we'll see what he does.
It's also still not an ideal scenario for it. The very ideal scenario for the 3-racks is that it just goes literally unscouted. Like the Adept sees a barrack, says, I guess I can't get any more information. Then the Protoss is like, I'll just twiddle my thumbs until a Widowmine drop happens, because that's still 70% of the opener. But in this case, GunGFu did once again go for a sentry. This time he doesn't waste a force field either. So he has still one of the best scouts, fastest scouts. He'll see that it is a 3-racks. And while he might still falter under the pressure, because it is still sometimes tricky to deal with, he has perfect knowledge. I feel like it's already a bit of a bummer for uThermal.
Did he go, was this Adept Sentry?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that is, if you're on Big Gabe's stream, you'll be hearing him talk about like how Sentry's kind of bad, but in this case, it's kind of paid off a little bit. Yeah, getting that scouting information. Obviously, you wanted to trick uThermal a little bit to make him overreact to the fake Oracle, maybe pull some SCVs, but obviously he didn't do that. uThermal has no idea what he's up against. Like, he's very much not in the know. He's producing 2 turrets. Oh, wait. Does he actually think that he's against Oracles now?
Oh, that's actually a good question. I don't think so. The Oracle died here, didn't it? And the Oracle... But go ahead.
He got a hit on it, which, for those that don't know, hallucinations take double damage. But the fact that he's got 2 missile turrets, he could be thinking, if he knew that was a hallucination, you know full well it's not DTs. But this, I think he got a little bit bamboozled there.
Yeah,
this is definitely a bit spicy.
I have seen a lot of Terrans go for the 3-racks and just default get the missile turret, because the threat of DTs, even like a kind of weird opening DT, is just a little bit too much for the 3-racks to handle if you're not already prepared. So I don't know. We have to ask him if he ends up winning the series, but he is going to be pinning one of his last hopes anyways, on this 3-racks, actually, at least controlling the game, because when it's scouted so early, it's not going to win the game. That's almost for sure. GunGFu would have to really mess up. But if you can control the game with it, then maybe that's also a nicer way for him to play out this game, nicer than the previous games.
Yeah, he has kept the Protoss on 2 bases with this. In my Terran brain, I'm always like, okay, if it's equal bases up to 3, it's pretty good for the Terran, actually. And GunGFu, he hasn't been able to do what he really wanted to do this game, which is, that nice macro game that he plays. This is very clean micro by him, though. The focus fire with individual stalkers is very nice, but uThermal would love to get out of here, or to have GunGFu outstay his welcome.
Can be a bit of a dance. uThermal is going to pounce on a vulnerable immortal if he thinks he can. So GunGFu has to keep that in mind, or a vulnerable blink even, right, if he pretends to leave. But this, and now that the Colossus is out, I think uThermal just actually overstayed his welcome. Although the Colossus just walks into the bio, that helps! All right, well, the Colossus is dead. Here come the reinforcing Marines. uThermal, I mean, I still don't like that he left his units there, right? And his Marines will get taken out, but at least there was something.
Okay, we're going to bring up the resources lost tab in a second here, because that went dreadful for uThermal. Like, that Colossus, I don't know if planting the Nexus automatically made the Colossus go forward there. Like, there was definitely some miscontrol by GunGFu, but that is a disastrous opening for uThermal. The one thing he does have on his side is actually have a worker lead here. But everything else, it's, he wanted way more from that 3-racks, I'll assure you.
Yeah, no, his units were just, they were hoping to hide. Then maybe if GunGFu is just like holding up in his natural, like he gets a quick cancel on the 3rd and then evacuates. But GunGFu would actually had an observer where it could see that the bio didn't evacuate, right? Like it couldn't see exactly where it was, but if it didn't go down the right pathway, then it's still somewhere around. So it's funny that he lost the Colossus, but he absolutely caught uThermal's pants down, only a portion of his army. Grabbing one Colossus and very little else was not worth it. uThermal does have the economic advantage, as you pointed out, but he is down in the army supply, and he doesn't know that GunGFu's going for the attack, so his tanks are actually caught undefended. 2 of them are going to go down instantly. No shots there, and the force fields. Oh my god, that is almost rude, GunGFu. uThermal is forced to lift and jump on top of Zealot and a Colossus. That's not going to work. GG. GunGFu with a very, very well played